This is a BYOC, bring your own chair morning. BYOCH, bring your own choir. BYOP, bring your own piano, and so it goes. I'm just warming my hands up here. Some of us were here at 8 a.m. We built a fire and had marshmallows. It was a lovely morning. So I don't know if you know that I know the Lord's Prayer by memory. And you wouldn't expect someone who was Jewish to know this text from the New Testament, actually. But I know the Lord's Prayer because, well, if you can picture a little Mark Shapiro growing up in Toronto, where I did, perhaps you can also see me every morning from first grade through 8th grade, standing up with my fellow students in my public school to recite together every morning, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name." And by the way, compliments of the same school. Picture me every morning in December with the whole school assembled in the gym so that all of us could sing Christmas carols. As you might imagine, I learned a number of them by memory, which comes in handy this morning as we celebrate Epiphany and Three Kings Day, though I don't believe this one will be sung. I learned, "We three kings of Orient are bearing gifts." Now I used to say, yeah, I checked all the words, now it's "we traverse," but when I was 8, I was sure it said "we travel afar." But it doesn't matter, "Oh star of wonder, star of light," etc., etc. I knew that baby by memory. Who knew back then that little Mark Shapiro, sitting in that gym, who knew that someday little Mark would be a rabbi preaching in a church on the occasion described in the carol? Who knew that you and I would share the gospel of wise men who followed a star day after day and night after night until it brought them to Jerusalem and then turned them south to a little village called Bethlehem. The star stopped over a home there. The wise men were welcomed into that home by Mary, and inside they found Jesus. They gave him their adoration and devotion, and according to the gospel, they also gave him their gifts. It's in that spirit this morning that I have a gift for you. My gift is a story, and the story itself is about a gift, which all makes for a very nice connection to the New Testament story with its gifts from those Bethlehem visitors. Taken together, both stories, I think, lead us to an important insight. One other comment on a fascinating aspect of the Matthew story we've heard. In that story, the number of visitors to Mary and Jesus is not mentioned, and the names of the visitors are also absent. Only later traditions fill in those blanks. Later on, we're told there were 3 visitors. The visitors come to be understood to be kings, and the 3 kings are given names. But as the story appears in the Bible, the gift-bearing visitors are anonymous. It's the same in the story that I want to share with you. A major figure who brings a gift is anonymous. And I wonder why that is so. Why are the gift givers in both stories not given names? Think on that question. I'll tell you my story, which is called The Wonderful Sandals of Abu Qasim. It's a Jewish folk tale that comes from Turkey. And when you've heard that, we'll come back and wonder aloud together. Why do the gift bearers have no names? First, a story from Turkey. There once was a man named Abu Qasim who lived in the land of Turkey. He made his living by selling rags And although he worked very hard, he was also very poor. Every morning, Abu Qasim would walk along the streets offering rags for sale, but no one wanted his rags. And soon, Abu Qasim grew so poor that he had only one torn shirt, one ragged pair of pants, and Abu Qasim had no shoes at all to put on his feet. One day, Abu Qasim was so downcast, having so little good fortune selling his rags, that he left town and walked out on one of the roads. And at a certain point, he sat down to eat the bread that he brought with for his meager lunch. As he was about to take the bread, he looked up and saw an old, tired man coming his way. So Abu Qasim asked the man to sit down beside him, and Abu Qasim shared the little piece of bread that he had with the man. And the man said, "Sir, you are so very kind. Is there any wish you have, and I will grant it to you?" Abu Qasim thought for a moment and said, "Yes, I have a wish. I need a pair of shoes." And the old man took out from the bag that he had a brand new pair of sandals, and he gave them to Abu Qasim. Abu Qasim was astonished. He looked down to put on the sandals, and he put them on, and as he turned around to thank the old man, he discovered that the old man was gone. But Abu Qasim now had the new pair of sandals. He stood up, and he knew from the moment he put on those sandals, his luck had changed. He walked faster. He walked with more assurance, and wouldn't you know it, the very next day, Abu Qasim sold more rags than he'd ever sold in a week, let alone a day. And soon, good fortune followed everywhere Abu Qasim went. Before he knew it, he had a little stall. He didn't have to walk around anymore. He was selling rags, and then he began to sell scarves. And wouldn't you know it, after a while, Abu Qasim opened a store, and then another store. And he not only sold rags and scarves, he sold hats, and he sold pants, and he sold shoes, and he sold pants, and he sold more of them and more shirts. Abu Qasim became wealthy. In his wealth, he made sure that there was always something to be bought in his store that a poor person could buy. And Abu Qasim also made sure that a soup kitchen was open in town. And he also made sure that a free school was opened in town. Everyone loved Abu Qasim. And then one day, one of his friends came and said, "Abu Qasim, you dress beautifully, you do great things for our community. Why are you still wearing those old sandals? Buy a new pair." Which Abu Qasim did. He bought himself a new pair, and then he thought, "I've got to get rid of these old sandals, but how?" Abu Qasim decided that he would go to the bathhouse, and he'd take the old sandals and with all the steam and things around, this is what he did. He left the sandals there, and he went home wearing his new ones, and he breathed a sigh of relief. Until the very next morning, when the manager of the bathhouse came to Abu Qasim's store and said, "Abu Qasim, you lost your sandals. Here, take back the sandals. They're yours. Don't ever give them up." Abu Qasim said, "Thank you." The next day, he had another idea. He went out to the lake where everyone fished, and when no one was looking, he threw the sandals into the lake and thought, "That's them," and he went home. The next morning at his store, a fisherman came in and said, "Abu Qasim, you must have lost your sandals by mistake. Here they are." And Abu Qasim said, "Oh, thank you so very much." The next day, Abu Qasim had an idea. He thought to himself, "Tonight, I'm going to take these things and bury them in a field outside town." So he took a shovel, and he walked to a field. He dug a hole, buried the sandals, and snuck back home. The next morning, 2 guards appeared at his store and said, "Abu Qasim, we're guards from the Sultan. Someone saw you last night on a field that belongs to the Sultan. What did you bury? Some treasure, something stolen? Come with us." So Abu Qasim had to come with his shovel and go back out to the field, dig down deep, and you know what he found? It was the sandals. And he tried to explain, and one of the guards said to him, "You know, Abu Qasim, I have heard that you were trying to rid yourself of these sandals, but it seems to me, Abu Qasim, that you have had these sandals forever. You've certainly had them for as long as you have been a gift to our community. They work. Keep the sandals. And the guard left the sandals with Abu Qasim. Abu Qasim got to thinking, thought to himself, that guard just said that I've had these sandals forever. But that's not true. That stranger gave them to me back on the road. I'm going to go back to that very same spot on the road and see if the stranger isn't there even today. So Abu Qasim packed himself a little lunch, put the sandals in his backpack, and he headed back to that spot on that road. And he waited and waited till it grew hot in the afternoon. No stranger. But all of a sudden, an older man, a poor man, showed up. And Abu Qasim said, here, sit down in the shade. Let me give you something to eat. And they got to talking, and the man said, oh, I'm in such bad straits. I can't take care of my family. I can't make a living. If only I had a new chance and a new start. And Abu Qasim thought, new chance and a new start. And Abu Qasim dipped into the backpack and brought out the sandals and said, here, my man, years ago someone gave me these sandals as a gift, and ever since then I've been okay. Take the sandals. These sandals, this gift will change your life. And the man put on the sandals, and he stood up and he smiled, and he seemed to be bigger and stronger. He seemed better immediately. He gave Abu Qasim a big hug, and off he went with big strides. And it seemed as if the sandals were already beginning to work their magic on him as well. And that's the story of Abu Qasim, who received a gift that changed his life, and then he gave a gift that promised to change the life of another man. Only one question. Remember? Who was the stranger at the beginning of the Abu Qasim story who first gave him those sandals? And for that matter, we don't learn that stranger's name. We also don't learn the names of those in the gospel who also were the visitors with the gifts. Why is that so? Well, I think it's so because we really don't need to know the names of those who bring gifts. It might be nice. We could write thank you letters. Can't you just see Mary? If she got the name and address of the 3 visitors, she could have written a lovely thank you note on behalf of herself and Joseph and Jesus. But maybe there's a larger reason why we are not given the details of the identities of those gift givers, either in the gospel or in the story I told you. I think it's because if we knew who they were, we might explain away their generosity. If we knew, for example, that the visitor to Abu Qasim owned a sandal factory, we could say, well, of course he gave sandals to Abu Qasim. He had more than enough of them, and besides, what a stroke of publicity. What a great public relations coup. He gives away free sandals. Same could be so told for the gospel story. If Matthew were to tell us that the visitors were kings, we could say, well, of course they brought gifts. They were wealthy nobles. A little frankincense, myrrh, and gold. What was it to them? If anything, kings should have brought more gifts. So it might go if we knew who the givers were in either story. Given human nature, it would be only too easy for us to second guess the giving. But we can't because we don't have the names in either story. We don't know if the wise men were wealthy or poor, if they traveled 1 week or if they traveled a month to find Jesus. We don't know if the man with the sandals was himself poor. Did he have a family? Were those sandals that he gave away the last ones, or did he have another dozen? The gift givers in both stories are anonymous because I think the gift givers could be anyone. They could be wealthy, they could be on their last legs, but they aren't identified to teach us that they could be anyone. They could be me, or you, or they could be the person 2 rows behind you. You don't have to be a king or 3 kings to give. You don't need royal blood to care. You don't need to be nobility to reach out, to touch, to revive, to make a difference. You can do wonders with a simple pair of sandals. You could change a life with a little bit of soup or some frankincense. And that's not a tall tale, that's not a fairy tale, it's a basic truth. I mean, you might say it's the gospel truth. Magic and wonders aren't only the providence of a select few. Gifts, they don't require a hefty checkbook. They only require humanity. They only require you and me. Have you got a smile? That's a gift. Share it. Give it away, as it were. Have you got a kind word? Let that be your gift. Have you got a gentle hand? Have you got patience? Have you got a sense of humor? Have you got optimism? Have you got faith? Have you got 1 minute, 5 minutes, or even an hour? All of it. From the hand to the patience to the faith, to the time, to the smile. All of it can be your gift. The truth may be that the wise man, or any of us willing to open our hearts to another person, we've all got gifts. You and I, we're all wise men, or wise women, or wise children. You and I can be exactly that. You and I have gifts. Our only task is to share them. Amen.
Amen.